Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's going on, bro?
Good. I just caught you live.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so your
Sorry, let
topic's
me.
about interracial relations.
Yeah, and whether men should be like men in these Western societies should be protective over their women. Um, yeah. Let me just read this comment, and then I'm just gonna get your opinion on it.
Okay.
I think men should protect women that need protecting, but no one should be gatekeeping who is with who. But I'm pro mixing. Yeah, I mean you're a product of mixture, so of course you would have. Uh, those sentiments. But yeah, what are your opinions, bro?
Well, I agree with that, guys. Like, we can't view women as our property. I think it's kind of cringe when white guys are like, "Oh, we need to protect white women and try and police who they date." At the end of the day, you fall in love with who you fall in love with. And I used to be a bit more radical with my ethno nationalism and my racial ideas, but now I'm kind of like, dude, like, let's say that you fall in love with someone who's Chinese. You're Indian, yeah?
Yeah, Pakistani. Yeah, South Asian.
Pakistani. Let's say that you fall in love with someone who's East Asian. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, you might not date her because you're like, well, I want my children to be South Asian. But who's to say that your children or your grandchildren or your great grandchildren won't marry outside their race? So you foregoing who you love because you want to secure some genetic line is short-sighted because you have no control over the descent of your children. So that's the way I view it. Is like, I don't care about multiculturalism to a point. So
Hmm.
that's why I like a super majority. I think that Western nations should retain their European racial majority, and then if everyone mixes in a society where there's like 90% European, it won't really matter. The offspring of that collective bunch would still look European for the most part. It's just going to counter things like inbreeding depression and make a stronger offspring. So that's how I view it. I think that nations should retain their demographic majority, and then as long as you have a super majority, the mixture in that population really doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that minority population will be just reintegrated
Absorbed.
into absorbed, yeah, into the wider European demographic. Um, okay, I see where you're coming from. But so in my community, the Pakistanis, they're very insular. They don't marry or date anybody outside of their nationality or their ethnic group. Um, and you see that in the United Kingdom, where there's a huge chunk of them, and their population is growing
Yeah.
naturally and through via immigration. Now, obviously, the white population with its lower fertility rate in the UK is going down
Yeah.
drastically, right?
Uh-huh.
Now, do you think that's going to cause an issue in the future? I mean, it's already causing issues, but
Yeah,
these people are
100%.
not integrating into wider society, right? It's like
So
they're just
I think
importing Pakistan into the
the
UK.
the issue with this, right, is like, as I said, I don't care about like degrees of multiracialism, degrees of multiculturalism. Like, I don't really like the term multiculturalism though. I think that if you were in a nation, you should try and assimilate to the dominant culture. I think what
Yeah.
people mean when they say multiculturalism, they actually mean multiracialism, and they don't want to say it because it sounds a bit more iffy, but that's the real concern. And let's say that, I don't know, what's the Asian population of the UK? Probably like 10% now.
Yeah, I think it was 9% in the last census. Yeah.
So if there was a halt to immigration immediately in the UK, let's say that they halted non-white immigration or just like immigration generally speaking, because at what point is a nation diverse enough? We're always talking about diversity is our greatest strength, but is there to a point? That's what I
Hmm.
think that the concern is. If there was a point where they're like, okay, we're diverse enough, we're going to end immigration, and then I think that would ease a lot of concerns for the white British population who feel that they're being taken over. Because
Yeah.
if there was a stop to immigration, people would be like, okay, we're all British now, we're all in this island together, and they would have some kind of an identity. But because there's always an influx, and I think this is a crucial point. It's like you see like second, third, fourth generation Pakistanis, and they
Hmm.
want to assimilate, but then you get these new breeds of Pakistanis that come in, first generations, and because you have this constant influx of the culture, they never really integrate because they're always still immersed by new generations coming in. So
Mm,
they,
yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? Like if you take like a Chinese immigrant, a Chinese descendant that's been there since the railroads, that person in Texas is going to speak with a Southern accent. They're going to be assimilated into Southern culture. Like, but if you keep putting them into Chinatown and then new Chinese come in every year, that person's never going to really assimilate into American culture.
Exactly, yeah. And that mass immigration is replenishing their population. I mean, if the UK and these countries was to stop mass immigration, the non-white fertility rate would be just below or the same as the white fertility rate.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, that mass immigration, like when does it stop? Like what is the figure? I mean, is
Well, the reason that they want constant immigration is because it looks good for the GDP. And that's the main reason I think that these politicians push for immigration is because, and it's really short-sighted because you talk about how people always mention how good immigration is for the economy. But what they really mean is that, let's say that you have an influx of people. There's more people that are working. There's more people that are spending. There's just more people in general that are spending within the economy. So, of course, the economy is going to get larger, but per capita is what matters. So,
of
let's take a
course,
country like India, one of the largest GDPs in the entire world. That's because they have 1 billion people. Now,
yeah.
compare that to Switzerland, one of the smallest GDPs in the world, probably. But GDP per capita, would you rather live in Switzerland or India? So it's really short sighted. And they're like, oh, well, the economy's growing bigger. There's more jobs. There's more people working. Well, no shit. There's more people in the country.
Yeah, yeah. Of course. Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. So which camp do you fall in? Do you fall? I mean, the white there's the white nationalists who say that there's a nefarious reason for mass immigration. It's just just to
Nefarious in
annihilate the white
echoes.
race. Hello?
Nefarious in echoes. The free echoes.
Yeah,
The
yeah, that
Jays.
yeah, that the J question, and then I believe it's purely economic. Mass immigration is purely economically. Do you
Yeah,
think it's a combination?
I don't know. I think that obviously the Jays are a bit more sympathetic to immigration, and I have my own kind of idea behind that.
But can I
Um,
say something though? But even
uh-huh.
when it comes to that, I mean, if you look at the Jays in France, the Muslims are very hostile to them.
Dude,
They're
that's
committing hate.
exactly my point. I've said that before. It's like they're shooting themselves in the foot. So I'll give you my hypothesis. I'll try to be very easy with my words here because I don't want
Yeah,
to get
yeah.
too in trouble. But basically, I think that these people, they're bringing in a more, so like historically they've been blamed for a lot of things, right? For
Hmm.
history. But when
Yeah.
you go to a neighborhood of those people, there's not really any problems. Like they're not they're not overtly like they don't form gangs. You're not going to get mugged by a bunch of Jays walking down the street. But
No.
when you bring in a bunch of people that don't really assimilate and come from, I guess, poorer backgrounds that are more prone to crime and forming gangs, then the attention is taken away from the Jays and placed on these people. And I think
Hmm.
that that's their main alternative, their main reason for this is it's like if we bring in immigrant groups that act worse than us, then we're going to look better. And if there is like ever a racial uprising or some kind of conflict,
Hmm.
we're going to be ignored. And like the focus is going to be put on these groups that are more, I guess, vocal. Like
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, the Jays they've always felt uncomfortable in a homogenous Christian European countries, right? Historically, they've been persecuted. Uh, so the white nationalists, the white Wignats would say that mass immigration, people like me are just foot soldiers for the Jays,
yeah, well,
uh,
that's the
to
thing
dilute
is
their
that I
power,
don't I
right?
don't really see immigrants like if I'm in Australia, dude, like fucking Sydney, Melbourne, all our major capital cities have been taken over basically by the Chinese. Like you go
Hmm.
into the city center in Sydney or Melbourne, and it's like you're in China. I swear to God, like the
Hmm.
fucking shops are in Chinese. Like 9 out of 10 people you cross in the street are Chinese.
Hmm.
But I don't blame these people. These are just people taking advantage of the systems that are in place. It's like
Yeah,
our
yeah,
politicians are the ones that are at fault. It's not some
yeah,
poor Pakistani immigrant or African immigrant or Arab that's coming here to drive a taxi or open a kebab shop or whatever the fuck. They're just taking advantage of what's in place
yeah,
with them.
yeah.
And if
These
I could
people,
move to a country where there was
yeah,
better economics, I would. So it's not these people's fault, it's the politicians.
yeah, yeah. People going to greener pastures. Um, yeah, these people. my honest opinion, I don't think a lot of them are. Most immigrants are not anti-white at all. Um, a lot of Wignats, they just haven't been around a lot of non-whites, in my opinion. Like my parents, like they don't even think about white people. If
Well,
anything,
I
they
think
have
I think it's
positive things to say about white people.
yeah. Well, what I've noticed myself is that when you get the first generation immigrants, like the stereotype that I've noticed is like if I'm in a taxi with an Arab, like a 50-year-old Arab that comes over, and it's like I don't know the Lebanese civil war. He's like, Australia, number one country in the world, best country. If you don't like Australia, fuck off to your own country. Like they're overly patriotic. Like
Yeah.
they overcompensate because they've left their country and they've come to a new country. So there's a selection bias there in like the type of person that would do that, right? So
Mhm.
they've given up their old identity and really immerse themselves in the new ones. But then what I've noticed is their children and their grandchildren revert back to their ethnic identity. So instead of
Mhm.
embracing Australia, their grandchildren will be like, fuck Australians, I'm Lebanese, you know? That's what
They,
I've noticed.
I think that comes from America. I think that comes from also hip hop culture. They try to appropriate the experience of Black Americans, and they try to suit that with where they're at. Try to be minorities or quote unquote oppressed. I think a lot of
Yeah,
this is just coming from this toxic culture is coming from America.
well, it's coming from somewhere, and I do think that that's what it is. Though, is they like when you can put yourself on a victim pedestal, which basically, if you're non-white, you automatically get some bonus points. So, like, if I'm like, even if I'm Chinese, right, and I come from a fucking like, I'll use an example: Singaporean Indians, for instance. One of the wealthiest groups in the world. A bunch of them studied at my university, and constantly I talk about how bad they have it in Australia, how racist Australians are, and all of
Yeah.
this shit. But they're like so wealthy, they're so privileged. And the reason for this is I think it is nice to put yourself as a victim because when you have a scapegoat, anything that you do, like any shortcoming you have, if you didn't study hard enough for a test, you didn't put in the work, you didn't try hard enough with your job, with your career, if you fail, then it's like you can blame it on a boogeyman, white people. You don't really
Yeah.
need to take that accountability, and I think that there's comfort in that. I think that's why a lot of people do play the victim.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
And it's super cringe. I hate it. One of my biggest talking points on my page is just stopping this notion. So, like, let's talk about white privilege for his instance, because a lot of people think white privilege is this black, like this all-encompassing privilege. But I made a post the other day, and it's like when you talk to non-whites in the Western world that talk about white privilege and systemic racism and like intersectionality of race and class and all this bullshit. They
Hmm.
always talk about white privilege, but they never talk about the two biggest privileges in this world. And I think the two biggest privileges on a global system is coming from a global north country, like number one,
Yeah.
because like our countries are propped up on the exploitation of the global south. Like there's no doubt about that. And
Hmm.
secondly, English speaking privilege. So when you travel the world, you go to, and I'm living in Thailand right now. You come to Thailand, everyone caters to you in English. So if you come from an English speaking country and a first world country, then you've got it better than like 99% of people just off the bat. But
Of
instead
course.
of like
Yeah.
recognizing that, they want to like make themselves a victim, and like
Hmm.
it's just super weird. I don't know.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, they say America's a white supremacist country, but America's almost damn near at 50 white. The white population is almost damn near at 50%.
And you look at the top earning racial groups, ethnic groups in the US, like Indians number one. If you look at religious communities, Jewish people are the highest earning religious community. Like it just doesn't make sense. Asian Americans, so they talk whenever you talk about racial injustices, they always look at the black-white gap. Okay,
Yeah.
and obviously under the black-white gap, white people live longer than black people. White people are less likely to be shot unarmed than black people. But if you
Hmm.
want to look at like just the gap in general, look at the Asian white gap.
They
Asian
they're
people
trying.
3 times less likely to be killed unarmed while confronted with the police. They earn more than white people. They live longer than white people. But it's always this black-white gap, and it's like it's kind of like a I don't know if it's like
Yeah, I
purposely.
mean that word racism. It's become synonymous with black now, uh, because Asians, the Indians, the Chinese, they break that. They break that narrative of
Well,
non-white
I wouldn't say it's synonymous
oppression.
with black. I'd say it's synonymous with white. I think that like if you're non-white, you still get some kind of you still get some kind of victim points. So you can be Chinese or Indian in the US and you still get some kind of victim points. I think like Native Americans, blacks obviously get more of a victim complex. Like there's a hierarchy there. But
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you
There's a
examine,
definitely
if you
hierarchy. Yeah.
examine it, it doesn't make sense because like white people are doing worse as a demographic than a ton of other even Cuban Americans are doing better than white people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um,
Yeah. But I'm gonna jump off, play some PlayStation. But
all right, bro.
we should tee up something again. I just saw you on live because you can do the 2-party live system now, like the
Hmm.
live streams. Have you tried that yet?
No, no.
Not on
What?
Streamlabs, just off YouTube itself.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, there's a
yeah,
new.
yeah.
I think
Well,
you need like.
we'll think of a topic, and yeah, I'd love to do a live stream with you, bro.
All right, man. Peace out.
All right, man. Have a good night. Take
Yeah.
care. All right, folks. That was thanks. That was a great discussion.